Okay, I want you to picture the ultimate predator. For most of us, the brain goes straight to Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's the celebrity. It's the tank.
Right. It's the bone crusher, the heavyweight champion, essentially.
Exactly. But what if I told you that while T-Rex was still just a gleam in evolution's eye, there was another giant roaming North Africa?
Mm-hmm.
A creature that was potentially longer than T-Rex, had a skull that was actually bigger than the tyrant lizards. But, well, it was built on a completely different engineering philosophy.
That is the key. The engineering. I mean, if T-Rex was a sledgehammer, this animal, it was a scalpel, a 6-ton scalpel.
And here's the twist. For over 50 years, this creature just didn't exist. Well, I mean, it didn't exist in museums.
Right.
The physical evidence for it was wiped off the face of the earth in a single night during World War II.
It is probably the most tragic ghost story in all of paleontology. But, it's also a story of resurrection.
It really is.
Today we are doing a deep dive into the shark-toothed giant of the Sahara, Carcharodontosaurus.
Carcharodontosaurus. That is a mouthful. I feel like I need a running start just to say it.
It is a bit of a tongue twister. But, like all good scientific names, it tells you exactly what you're looking at. It breaks down from the Greek. You have Carcharos,
Okay.
which means jagged or sharp. Otis means tooth. And Sauros, obviously, is lizard.
So, jagged-toothed lizard.
Or, as it's usually translated, the shark-toothed lizard.
Yeah.
And that isn't just a poetic flourish. The name specifically references the genus Carcharodon.
The great white.
The great white shark, exactly. The scientist who named it looked at its teeth and just saw this striking resemblance to the ocean's perfect predator.
We are absolutely going to get into the mechanics of those teeth because they are terrifying. But first, we have to address this ghost story. You mentioned the evidence was destroyed. I mean, how do you lose a 40-foot dinosaur?
You lose it in the fog of war. The story really begins in this golden age of exploration. The first hints actually popped up in Algeria in 1924. Two French paleontologists, WWII and Savronneau, they found two massive serrated teeth. They knew they had a large theropod, but they didn't have enough bone to really define a new species. So they did what everyone did back then.
They threw it into the wastebasket genus.
Yep.
Let me guess. Megalosaurus.
You got it. Megalosaurus saharicus. For a long time, Megalosaurus was just the label for big meat eater. Not sure what else. But the real breakthrough happened in Egypt with a German paleontologist named Ernst Stromer.
Stromer is a legend in the field.
He is. In 1914, he and his collector, Richard Markgraf, were digging in the Bahariya Formation, and they uncovered a partial skeleton that was clearly something unique. But look at the date.
Yeah.
1914.
Right, World War I.
Precisely. Stromer was German.
Right.
Egypt was effectively under British control, so the geopolitical tension was, was through the roof.
I can imagine.
Because of the war and all the chaos that came after,
Yeah.
those bones couldn't even be shipped to Munich until 1922. And it took Stromer another 9 years to clean, prep, and analyze them. Finally, in 1931, he publishes his description. He sees those distinct shark-like serrations, and he officially names it Carcharodontosaurus.
So 1931, the skeleton is in the Paläontologisches Museum in Munich. It's a crown jewel. We have the proof.
We did, for a time. But then came the Second World War.
Yeah.
Stromer actually pleaded with the museum directors to move the fossils to a safe location, like a salt mine, to protect them from air raids.
That seems sensible.
It was. But because Stromer was an outspoken critic of the Nazi regime, his requests were ignored.
Wow. So it wasn't just bad luck. That's political.
It was. And on the night of April 24th, 1944, the Royal Air Force conducted a massive bombing raid on Munich. The museum took a direct hit.
Oh, no.
And the holotype, the single specimen that defined the species, was incinerated,
Gone.
turned to ash. The only things that survived were Stromer's scientific drawings, some grainy photographs, and a cast of the brain cavity. For the next half-century, Carcharodontosaurus was effectively a myth.
A ghost.
A name in a textbook with nobody to back it up.
Until the 1990s. This seems to be when everything in dinosaur science gets a reboot.
The renaissance of paleontology, yeah. In 1995, Paul Sereno from the University of Chicago led an expedition to the Kem beds in Morocco. He wasn't specifically looking to resurrect Stromer's lost giant, but that's exactly what happened. They found a skull.
And this wasn't just a few fragments they glued together.
No, this is a massive, largely incomplete, but diagnostic skull. This specimen became the neotype. It allowed scientists to officially redefine Carcharodontosaurus saharicus and, bring it back from the dead.
So thanks to Sereno and his team, we can actually look at this thing again. Let's talk about the tail of the tape. Everyone always wants to know. Was it bigger than T-Rex?
Ah, the eternal playground debate. It's surprisingly complex. The current consensus estimates place Carcharodontosaurus between about 12 and 12.5 meters in length. So that's roughly 39 to 41 feet.
And weight-wise?
Somewhere in the range of 5 to 7 metric tons.
So it's definitely in the same weight class as T-Rex.
Oh, absolutely. It's right up there. It's competing for the title of largest theropod alongside T-rex, Giganotosaurus from South America, and of course, Spinosaurus.
Right.
In fact, when Serino first described the new skull, he estimated it 1.6 meters long. For context, that is longer than the skull of Sue, the famous Field Museum T-rex.
That is a massive head, 5 feet of skull.
Later studies, specifically by Carano in 2012, they dialed that estimate back a bit to about 1.42 meters. But really, regardless of a few centimeters here or there, we're dealing with a predator that pushed the biological limits of size. But, and this is the crucial part, it was built completely differently than a tyrannosaur.
You mentioned it earlier, the difference between a sledgehammer and a scalpel. Let's unpack that. If I'm looking at the skull of a T-Rex versus a Carcharodontosaurus, what am I seeing?
If you look at a T-rex, you see width. You see thick, fused bones designed to absorb massive shock. There's a bone pressure. Carcharodontosaurus, on the other hand, has a skull that is, well, it's narrow and triangular. And it is incredibly lightweight.
Lightweight for a 6-ton animal.
Relatively speaking, yes. The skull is filled with what are called fenestrae,
Which are?
a fancy Latin word for windows. These are large openings in the skull bones. They're also deep depressions called fossae. Now, these structures house muscles, sure, but their primary job was to reduce mass. It's like an airplane fuselage, right?
Maximum strength, minimum weight.
Exactly. If Carcharodontosaurus had a solid skull like a T-rex, it probably wouldn't have been able to lift its head off the ground.
That makes sense. It's all about optimization. I also read something about the nose having a rugose texture. That sounds medical.
It does sound a bit clinical. In paleontology, rugose just means wrinkly or bumpy. The nasal bones had this rough, textured surface. And this strongly suggests that in life, those bones were covered in keratin sheaths, the same material as your fingernails or a bird's beak.
So it wasn't just skin and scale, it had some kind of structure on its face.
Very likely. It probably had these hard, horn-like ridges or crests running down its snout. It would have given the animal a very distinct, very menacing profile.
Okay, let's get to the weaponry, the teeth, the shark connection. You said they aren't bone crushers.
Absolutely not. And this is the most fascinating piece of the puzzle. A T-rex tooth is like a banana. It's round, thick, with deep roots. It's designed to punch through armor and bone without snapping. Carcharodontosaurus teeth, they're blades. They are laterally compressed, meaning they're flattened side to side.
How flat are we talking?
Extremely. A large tooth might be 6.5 centimeters tall, but only about 1 centimeter thick.
Wow, that sounds fragile.
It is, structurally, but it's sharp. The serrations are incredibly fine. We're talking 18 to 20 serrations per centimeter. It is effectively a steak knife.
Okay.
But nature added this brilliant reinforcement feature. They have what are called enamel wrinkles.
Enamel wrinkles, I've never heard of that.
It's a specific adaptation. Near the serrations, the enamel actually bows and ripples. Think of it like the corrugation in a cardboard box or a sheet of steel roofing. That waviness adds structural integrity. It stops cracks from spreading across the tooth.
So it's a way to keep a thin, sharp blade from just snapping the moment it hits something hard.
Precisely. But it still dictates behavior. You cannot bite into a femur with these teeth. They would shatter.
So if it can't clench bone, how does it kill a 40-foot sauropod?
We have to look at the bite force. Estimates for Carcharodontosaurus sit between about 11,000 and 25,000 newtons.
Which, to be fair, is a lot. That would ruin my day.
Oh, it would snap you in half.
Yeah.
But compared to T-rex, which was pushing 35,000, maybe even 57,000 newtons, it's significantly weaker. The skull structure, with all those weight-saving windows, just couldn't handle the stress of a clamp and shake maneuver. So paleontologists believe it used a slash and bleed tactic.
Slash and bleed, that sounds visceral.
It is. The hypothesis is that Carcharodontosaurus would use its long neck to strike quickly, raking those serrated teeth across the soft tissue of its prey, the flank, the neck, the underbelly. It would open up these massive long wounds to cause rapid blood loss, exsanguination.
So it's not trying to overpower the prey instantly, it's inflicting a fatal wound and then backing off.
Exactly. It's a hit-and-run attack. And we have more evidence that it wasn't a wrestler. A 2015 study by Henderson and Nichols analyzed the lifting strength of the neck and jaws.
Lifting strength, like how much weight it could pick up off the ground.
Precisely. And they found that a single adult, could lift about 424 kilograms.
424 kilos. That's roughly 935 pounds.
Which sounds impressive to us, as humans. But in the dinosaur world, it's surprisingly low. For comparison, a sauropod, a plant eater of a similar body size, like Lamosaurus, had neck muscles capable of lifting double that.
So Carcharodontosaurus really wasn't built for heavy lifting. It wasn't dragging carcasses around or tossing animals.
No, it was a precision striker. And speaking of precision, we need to talk about its eyes. Because for a predator that relies on striking, you'd think it would have eagle vision.
I'm missing there's a butt coming.
A big butt. A study by Kent Stevens in 2006 modeled its field of view. And because the snout is so long and narrow, it actually blocks a significant portion of the forward view. It had very limited binocular vision, only about 40 degrees of overlap where it could see in 3D.
So it had terrible depth perception.
Compared to a T-rex or a raptor, yes. Yeah. This suggests it wasn't running down prey over long distances where judging that gap is crucial. Instead, it likely relied on something called motion parallax.
That's a thing birds do, right? Bobbing their heads.
Right, or like a lizard. By moving his head side to side, objects at different distances move at different speeds relative to the background. It helps you judge distance without binocular overlap. This fits the profile of an ambush predator.
Lying in wait.
Lying in wait in the tree line or the mangroves, waiting for a silhouette to cross its path and then strike.
That image actually brings us perfectly to the setting. We have to talk about the danger zone because everything I read about Cretaceous North Africa makes it sound like the most dangerous place that has ever existed on this planet.
It's certainly up there. We're in the Sandemanian stage, about 100 to 94 million years ago. North Africa wasn't a desert then. It was a lush, tropical network of mangrove forests, tidal flats, and wetlands bordering the Tethys Sea.
And it was crowded.
Incredibly crowded. In fact, this ecosystem presents a famous problem in paleontology known as Stromer's riddle.
Stromer's riddle. Okay, what's the riddle?
It's the ratio. In almost every ecosystem, modern or ancient, you have a large base of herbivores, the prey, and a very small number of apex carnivores. Think of the Serengeti. Tons of wildebeest, very few lions.
Right.
But in the Kem beds in Bahia, the fossil record shows an inverted pyramid. There's a weirdly high number of giant carnivores.
Who are the neighbors we're talking about?
We had Carcharodontosaurus, you had Spinosaurus, which was even larger physically. You had Deltadromeus, another large theropod. You had crocodile cousins like Stomatosus and Elasuchus that were the size of school buses.
It's a monster mash. How does an ecosystem even support that many apex predators without them just eating each other into extinction?
That is the riddle. And the answer appears to be niche partitioning.
Dividing up the buffet.
Exactly. And we don't just have to guess at this. We have the chemistry to prove it. Scientists have analyzed the calcium and oxygen isotopes in the teeth of these animals.
You are what you eat.
Literally. The isotope values in Spinosaurus teeth match those of aquatic animals. They were eating fish giant sawfish like Onchopristis coelacanths. They were spending their time in the river systems.
And our shark-toothed friend?
Carcharodontosaurus isotopes are strictly terrestrial. They drank from the river shore, but they fed on land. They were hunting the sauropods like Rebbachosaurus and the iguanodons. So even though they lived in the same zip code, they weren't ordering off the same menu.
I love that. So Spinosaurus gets the water, Carcharodontosaurus gets the land, just staying out of each other's way.
It's a professional courtesy among monsters. Avoiding conflict prevents injury, and for a predator, injury usually means death.
Now, I want to zoom out a bit on the family tree. We've mentioned Giganotosaurus a couple of times, which lived in South America. How are they related?
They are very close cousins. They both belong to the family Carcharodontosauridae. In fact, Carcharodontosaurus is more closely related to Giganotosaurus and Maposaurus from Argentina than it is to any North American dinosaur like Allosaurus.
But wait, South America and Africa are separated by the Atlantic Ocean?
They are now. But this relationship is a smoking gun for plate tectonics. It proves that the separation of these continents was recent enough, geologically speaking, that these animals shared a common ancestor on the supercontinent Gondwana.
So before the Atlantic unzipped the continents, this one family of shark-toothed giants ruled the entire southern hemisphere.
Essentially, yes. It was a transcontinental dynasty.
Before we wrap up, I need to ask about a controversy. I saw in the notes there might be a second species, Carcharodontosaurus igadensis.
Ah, yes. In 2007, fossils found in Niger were described as a new species, Igadensis. It was thought to be slightly smaller than Saharicus. But science has never settled. Recent studies, some as late as 2016, even proposals for 2025, have re-examined those fossils. The argument now is that the materials is too fragmentary to be sure. Some paleontologists think those bones might actually belong to a different animal entirely, maybe Sigelmassasaurus, or they just fall within the normal variation of Saharicus.
So for now, Carcharodontosaurus saharicus is the one true king of the genus.
It seems that way. It's a good reminder that paleontology is a puzzle where half the pieces are missing, and the picture on the box keeps changing.
So let's recap. We have a 40-foot predator that rivals T-rex in size, but is built like a fighter jet. It had a lightweight skull, teeth reinforced like corrugated steel to slice rather than crush, and it lived in a swamp full of other nightmares.
And perhaps most importantly, it's a species that we almost lost forever to the flames of World War II, only to find it again in the desert sands 50 years later.
It's an incredible story of resilience. Now, usually we end with a fun fact, but the expert note here raises a really provocative question. We spend all this time debating, who would win in a fight, T-rex or Carcharodontosaurus?
The classic schoolyard scenario.
But you wanted to flip that on its head.
I do. Think about the fragility we discussed. The lightweight skull, the thin teeth, the lack of lifting power. Why would nature evolve a predator that massive with a head that delicate?
You'd think bigger means heavier, stronger, bulkier.
Exactly. But Carcharodontosaurus teaches us that being the king isn't always about brute force. It's about precision. It's about efficiency. In a crowded ecosystem, you don't need to be a tank if being a fencer works better.
I love that image, the fencer of the Cretaceous. It didn't need to crush bones, it just needed to be fast, sharp, and accurate.
Precisely. It challenges our bias that strongest always means best. Sometimes, the most specialized design is the one that wins.
A profound thought to end on. That is all the time we have for this deep dive into the shark-toothed giant. Thanks for helping us unpack this monster.
My pleasure.
And thank you for listening. Keep asking questions, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.